This is Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa. The story of resurgent and burgeoning Africa is here, only on the Pulse of Africa channel. Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa.
Hello and welcome. I am Binyam Getana, bringing you the latest stories and updates from across the continent. Zambia President Hakainde Hichilema on Friday pledged his country's continued support in advocating for the removal of illegal and unilateral sanctions imposed on Zimbabwe by the West. He made the pledge during a visit to Harare for the first Zimbabwe-Zambia Binational Commission. President Emerson Mnangagwa thanked Zambia for its unwavering advocacy. Both countries agreed to deepen cooperation in trade, energy, security and border management, including extending operating hours at the Victoria Falls and Chuduru border post 24 hours starting December.
We need Zimbabwe to exercise its desire to develop the economy, to support its people. Sanctions are standing in the way. I must say, Mr. President, those sanctions on Zimbabwe affect us because they limit what we can do with each other. So we have a vested interest. So that's our call. And that's why I acknowledge the media. Please carry the message.
Zimbabwe announced it will scrap transit duties on petroleum products and address other trade barriers in its 26th national budget. The two governments also signed multiple memorandums of understanding covering diplomatic training, immigration, agriculture and youth development, signaling a strengthened bilateral partnership. South Africa has declared it's fully prepared to welcome world leaders to Johannesburg for the 2025 G20 Summit, the first ever hosted on the African continent. We have never been this ready, said Ambassador Noseba Losi, South Africa's envoy to Ethiopia and permanent representative to the AU and UNECA. She told POA Media that South Africa has already completed 130 of the 133 planned G20 preparatory meetings, including major gatherings ahead of the Leaders' Summit. Lucy says that South Africa's experience hosting major global events from EU summit to two BRICS summits positioning it well for the task.
South Africa is known for hosting international summits. You'll recall we've hosted the AU summits, the BRICS summits, in fact the BRICS summits twice. So we are looking forward to welcoming all the world leaders to South Africa. And this will be the first G20 summit in South Africa. And as you may have heard and you may have seen that we've always said this G20 is not only for South Africa, but for the continent.
She also highlighted the strong coordination with the African Union, noting Monday G20 AU meeting in Addis Ababa as proof of Africa's united approach. Lucy underscored the country's logistical readiness, secure venue, prepared cities and hotels ready to receive delegations.
So South Africa is ready. It's ready both on substance, as I alluded to the 130 meetings that have been held thus far, but also on logistics. You may have seen, I watched on TV where the president had his last walkabout last week to showcase the state of readiness. Our security is on top of things. You may have seen our cities are ready. We've got beautiful restaurants in South Africa. The conference hall is ready. But also our beautiful hotels around Sandton, around Sanctions, where we'll be hosting all our dignitaries, including the citizens of many other countries. So we welcome We welcome everybody.
The G20 summit will take place in Johannesburg on November 2023 to 23rd, 2025 under the theme Solidarity, Equality and Sustainability. Discussions will focus on global inequality, climate resilience and inclusive economic growth, with South Africa positioning itself as a voice for the Global South.
They shaped history. They inspire generations. They are the notables. Join us as we honor Africa's greatest minds and trailblazers, the notables, celebrating Africa's icons.
Today, we bring you the story of a son of Ghana, a son of Africa whose claimed strengths touched the entire world. His name, Kofi Ata-Annan.
We need to create a world that is equitable, that is stable, and a world where we bear in mind the needs of others.
A man who's believed that peace is not the absence of war, but the presence of justice and dignity.
The focus on individuals and people is the right one, and if we work in partnership and we all do our little bit collectively, we will make a giant contribution.
The notables, celebrating Africa's icons.
The African Development Bank Group and the World Health Organization have signed a 3-year agreement to implement the Sudan Health Emergency and Infrastructure Project aimed at expanding access to essential health care across Sudan. With only 48% of Sudan's health facilities fully functional, the project will support emergency response, rebuild key services and strengthen health system resilience. At least 6 million people, including 3 million women and 1.2 million IDPs, are expected to benefit. WHO will rehabilitate health facilities, equip primary care centers, provide essential supplies and train health workers while improving disease surveillance and emergency response capacity. Shibile Shabani said the partnership supports both recovery and ongoing emergency needs. WHO's expertise will ensure effective implementation, particularly in conflict-affected regions such as Darfur, Kordofan, White Nile, and parts of Khartoum. A growing community of artists in one of the Nairobi's poorest neighborhoods is using creativity to inspire. A growing community of artists in one of Nairobi's neighborhoods is using creativity to inspire hope and nurture the next generation of talent. Local painters, sculptors, and muralists have turned abandoned walls and makeshift studios into vibrant spaces where children and youth can learn and experience themselves. The initiative aims to offer alternative to crime, addiction, and unemployment challenges that have long defined life in the area. Artists say the movement is not only transforming public spaces but also restoring confidence among young people who rarely have access to creative opportunities. Through the mentorship, workshops, and public art projects, the group is helping emerging talents find their voice and envision a future beyond hardship. Residents say the neighborhood's colorful murals and lively art sessions have brought a renewed sense of pride and community spirit. For many youths, art has become more than a pastime. It has become a pathway to empowerment, education, and new possibilities. Morocco has launched the 3rd edition of its Moroccan Handicraft Treasures program, a national initiative aimed at safeguarding traditional craft threatened with extinction. Launched in 2023, the program seeks to protect Moroccan's intangible cultural heritage by training young artists under the supervision of master craftsmen classified on the official Moroccan Handicraft Treasure list. The initiative not only preserves ancestral knowledge but also promotes innovations among the next generation. We are very proud of this partnership with UNESCO, said Lasseno Sadi, Secretary of State in charge of handicrafts and the economy. We have been able to safeguarding more than 32 crafts recognized as being at risk of the disappearing. There were only 4 master artisans who will practice them. Through this training program, we will prepare more than 350 new instructors in all these crafts. Sharif Hamdi, Director of UNESCO Office in the Maghreb Arab region, underscored the importance of preserving manual techniques, and participants were shown, for example, that a saddle cannot function without laser, he said. Through this initiative, Morocco continues to assert its commitment to protecting its rich cultural heritage while empowering youth to carry ancestral craftsmanship into the future. Now, moving to business news. Uganda's ambitious 4 billion oil refinery project has gained momentum with the signing of new contracts backed by investors from the United Arab Emirates, highlighting the East African nation's growing appeal to international energy partners. The agreements, reported by Bloomberg, are aimed at advancing constructions and enhancing the refinery's capacity to process local produced crude. The UAE partnership is a significant boost for our refinery project, ensuring that we remain on track to meet production and export targets, said Ugandan Petroleum Ministry Ruth Nakiwabari, according to Business Insider. Industry analysts said the backing from United Arab Emirates investors could accelerate the project timeline and improve financial terms while positioning Uganda as a more competitive player in the regional oil market. The refinery, expected to handle over 60,000 barrels per day initially, is central to the government's strategy to boost local values addition and reduce dependency on imported refined products. Togo's President Faure Gnassingbé opened the 4th UK West and Central Francophone African Trade and Investment Forum in Lomé on Wednesday, marking the first time the event is held in Africa. Nearly 700 policymakers, investors and business leaders from about 10 countries are attending. The two-day forum features country representations, a panel and B2B meetings focused on investment opportunities, trade partnerships and financing tools between the UK and Francophone Africa. Gnassingbé highlighted Togo's strategic position in the regional growth corridor from Lagos to the Abidjan and its improved business climate. A memorandum of understanding covering infrastructure, agriculture and agro-industry was signed between Togo and British partners. Gnassingbé also urged investors to pursue long-term cooperation, especially in green growth, digital finance, local processing of raw materials and creative industries. Moving to sport news. The journey of the Total Energies CAF Africa Cup of Nations trophy marked an important milestone with a high-profile stop in Boulogne-Billancourt, just outside Paris. After visiting Angola, Nigeria and South Africa, France became the latest country to welcome one of the most iconic symbols of the African football, a source of unity and pride for the entire continent. This stop forms part of the international tour led by Total Energies in close cooperation with the CAF as anticipation builds ahead of the next edition of the Total Energies CAF AFCON Morocco 2025, scheduled from 21 December 2025 to 18 January 2026. During its visit to France, the trophy was featured on the El After RMC Sports flagship football program and a staple of the French sports media landscape. Followed by nearly 40 million listeners annually, the show has become a key space for analysis, debates and passionate football discussion. The trophy also appeared in a recording of After Afrique, the dedicated African football podcast under the RMC banner, which captured a special episode of 30 November in its presence. Lionel Messi delivered a standout performance as Argentina defeated Angola 2-0 in a friendly, marking Angola's 50th independence anniversary on Friday in Luanda. Messi assisted Lautaro Martinez for the 44th minute opener before scoring Argentina's second in the 28th minute. The world champions controlled the match throughout, showing the gap between the side. Argentina sit 87% 87 places above Angola in the FIFA ranking. The win adds to Argentina's strong form ahead of the 2026 World Cup. For Angola, the match was a symbolic celebration, even as their team continues to rebuild following a difficult qualifying campaign. The president of Angola honored Lionel Messi with an award before kickoff in the Argentina versus Angola game. Next, let's check the current weather forecast. Thanks for joining us on Pulse of Africa News. Keeping following us for more stories that matters across the continent.
This is Editorial from Pulse of Africa, the voice and face of Africa.
Much of current tensions that arose between and among nations far and near in relation to apparent ownership and the right of unfettered access to the sea in Africa found its genesis in the checkered history brought about by centuries of colonialism. A deeper look into this incendiary topic highlights the fact that slavery and colonialism pitted coastal and hinterland populations against each other by creating economic incentives for conflict using existing power structures and disrupting traditional trade networks. Coastal groups acting as a middleman for European traders became intermediaries who supplied captives from the interior, often using warfare or raiding to acquire them, while the hinterland population suffered the consequences. Colonialism later solidified these divisions, establishing artificial boundaries and economic structures that favored coastal elites who profited from resource extraction, further alienating them from inland communities and creating a legacy of tension and resentment. How colonialism deepened the divide is an interesting fact to brood over to get a clearer understanding of the ways current relationships along the Red Sea have come into play. Benefiting coastal elites, colonial powers often propped up coastal leaders who were willing to collaborate in exchange for wealth and power. This created a new class of coastal elites whose wealth was built on the exploitation of both their own people in the interior and the resources of the land, resource extraction and artificial boundaries. Colonial economies were built for the extraction of raw materials, benefiting the colonizers and coastal trading hubs. They drew artificial borders that often split communities, but still relied on the interior for labor and resources, further entrenching the exploitative relationship between the coast and the hinterland. Legacy of equality. The colonial system left behind a legacy of inequality and resentment, where coastal regions often held political and economic advantage over their hinterland counterparts, perpetuating the divisions that slavery and colonialism had created. The Red Sea, the world's most important strategic waterways, linking the Mediterranean Sea to the Indian Ocean through the Suez Canal and Bab el-Mandeb Strait, is no different from the rest of Africa in terms of the ways colonialism resulted in continued fragmentations of the African societies. These tensions spiraled into modern times as more and more foreign players joined old players in the region's geopolitics, marked by dynamisms of alignment among them. Big powers set up camp on the Red Sea in their bids to expand their respective sphere of influence across Eastern and Northern Africa, as well as the Middle East. Such expansions have been matched by countries in the region aligning with big powers and creating their own axis. As such, the Red Sea has for long been a theater for power plays between and among countries in the region, as well as foreign powers. Their objectives either geopolitical power and influence or the control of one of the world's busiest maritime straits. As nearly 10% of global trade passes through this corridor, major actors such as the US, China, Russia, and European states, alongside regional powers like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Turkey, have expanded their political, economic, and military presence. Gulf states have invested heavily in ports and bases across the Horn of Africa, while China established its first overseas military base in Djibouti. Simultaneously, Turkey and Qatar have strengthened ties with Somalia and Sudan, highlighting how global ambitions intersect with regional rivalries. For the Horn of Africa, this renewed competition offers both opportunities and risks. Foreign investments in infrastructure and trade corridors promise economic growth, yet the proliferation of military bases and competing alliances have deepened internal divisions and weakened regional sovereignty. Dependence on external powers has limited policy autonomy, while Gulf rivalries and great power competitions have spilled into local politics, aggravating instability in states like Somalia and Sudan. Ultimately, without coordinated regional governance and balanced diplomacy, the Horn risks becoming a fragmented battleground for external interests rather than a unified hub of maritime and economic cooperation. The Red Sea corridor and the Horn of Africa are inseparable in modern geopolitics. While heightened foreign engagements brings opportunities, infrastructure investment, trade linkage is also creates dependency, strategic vulnerability, and contestations. Ultimately, the degree to which Horn states can assert their own policy choices, coordinate regionally, and manage external involvement will shape whether this era of scramble results in beneficial integration or deepened instability. As of late, countries in the Eastern Africa region that have been rendered landlocked are beginning to be demanding for fairness and justice in current systems and relationships that determine access to the sea and military of commercial use of the sea or both. Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni recently warned of potential future wars in East Africa over landlocked countries' access to the Indian Ocean. Museveni suggested it was wrong for any country in the region to claim exclusive ownership of the sea. By being audacious in bringing the issue up to the international attention, Museveni was suggesting also that his country's economy was growing and the population expanding, making it needful for his country to have a share of the maritime cake provided by the vast Indian Ocean coast bordering the region of East Africa. Ethiopia, the most populous country by far in the region, feels, and rightly so, shady deals during the country's political transition more than 30 years ago robbed it of its most vital access to the Red Sea. Ethiopia has woken up to the urgent need for Red Sea access, framing the issue as legal, historical, and existential necessity for the Horn of Africa nation of more than 135 million people. Ethiopia, therefore, is exploring all diplomatic and legal channels for unfettered access to the sea, and the international legal frameworks back its rights. But international frameworks, such as that provided by the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, have barely been adhered to by so-called coastal states, often denying landlocked states fair access to the sea for whimsical political reasons. All relations between and among nations revolving around ownership and use of the Red Sea must involve influential and pivot countries in the East Africa. The issue of access to the sea can no longer remain swept under the carpet. Sea access demands cannot continue to be the white elephant in the room. The legitimate right to the Red Sea by landlocked countries in the region need to be addressed once and for all. Protectionism, as expressed by few countries that are littoral to the Red Sea to the exclusion of big geopolitical players in the region, will not bring the desired integration, cooperation, and stability in the region.
This is Editorial from Pulse of Africa, the voice and face of Africa.